Hello, this is Professor James Strickler, and this is a course in American government. This lesson is from Unit 7 about the judicial branch, and this is Lesson 5 about justiciability. In this lesson, you'll learn about what justiciability is, you'll learn about actual controversies, you'll learn about standing, and you'll learn about sovereign immunity. This lesson is one in a series that we're beginning Unit 7 with, in which we talk about the principles that American courts have inherited from the English judicial system. In previous lessons, we talked about the common law, about trial by jury, and about our adversarial system. In this lesson, we'll learn about the concept of justiciability. So let's begin by first understanding the very concept of justiciability. Justiciability refers to the capacity of a court to actually decide a case. Now, just because you have some sort of issue that you think courts should decide doesn't mean that it actually should decide them. Particularly within the American court system, there are limits to what kind of complaints the courts can actually take and render decisions about. There are three particular features of this that we want to talk about in this lesson: the actual controversies, standing, and sovereign immunity. Let's begin by talking about what it means to have an actual controversy. For there to be an actual controversy that then a court can decide, a law has to have actually been broken, or some harm has to have actually been done. If a law is actually broken, then we're talking about a criminal case, like we've discussed in a previous lesson. Or if a harm is actually done, we're talking about a civil case, like we discussed in a previous lesson. The point is that something has to have actually happened. Now, that may seem kind of obvious to you, but it shouldn't necessarily be so. In some countries in the world, you can bring hypothetical questions to court. You can essentially go to the courtroom and say, if I did this, would I get in trouble? Not in the American court systems. In America, you cannot bring a hypothetical case. Instead, some law has to have actually been broken, or some harm has to have actually been done. If you want to find out if what you want to do will actually get you in legal trouble, the only way to be sure is to actually do it. The next concept that we want to talk about is standing. Standing, that term is drawn from the long-held practice in courts of having the parties to a case, the people involved in it, to stand before the judge and the jury. So those who are actually involved in the real controversy of a case are said to have standing. So the previous concept was actual controversy. There's a law actually broken, or there's a harm actually done. So if you have standing, then you are the person that the harm was actually done to. Though what this means is that you can't bring a lawsuit on behalf of somebody else. You can't say, oh, that person was in a car accident, they got hurt, I'm going to go sue the person that was driving the other car and hurt them. No, 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 no. The person who was actually hurt has to be the one to bring the case. They're the only ones who have standing. Now, there's one sort of obvious exception, which you may already have thought of, and that's minor children. Parents can bring cases on behalf of their little kids. But other than an exception like that, in order to bring a case, you have to be the person that the thing actually happened to. The next concept we want to discuss is called sovereign immunity. Sovereign immunity is based on the concept of sovereignty that we've discussed previously in this course. If you recall then, we talked about how English kings were called sovereigns. And the English kings were believed to be the absolute authority in society. What sovereign meant was that they were above everyone else. There was no one above them to tell them what to do. If you were the king, you bossed everyone else around. No one bossed you around. Now, let's apply this concept of sovereignty to the idea of bringing a lawsuit against a king. If you were able to sue a king, and a court was then able to give you a judgment ordering the king to pay you money because the king somehow harmed you, then effectively the king wouldn't be sovereign anymore, because the court would be bossing the king around, telling the king to give you stuff. And so from this principle came the idea that the sovereign cannot be sued. If you can sue them, they wouldn't be sovereign anymore. This then is what we call sovereign immunity. The sovereign is immune from being brought into court. To apply this concept to the United States of America, we have to remember that in America, we, the people, are sovereign. Now, that's kind of a vague thing to think about, that the people are sovereign. In practical effect, the sovereignty of the people is represented in the government they create. So, if you were going to sue the sovereign in the United States of America, we the people, you would have to sue their government, which is their representative. So if we apply the concept of sovereign immunity then to our American system of government, what it means is you cannot sue the government. This is a general legal principle in the United States of America, that the government cannot be sued. People can't claim that the government hurt them and then go to court and try to get money from the government. Now, I have to be careful though, because there is a very big exception to this. And that is, you can't sue the government unless the government grants you permission to sue them, which the government of the United States of America and the governments in the states oftentimes do. They'll pass a law about how conduct should be in a certain area of our lives, and they'll say, yes, and if the government violates this, you can sue them also. But notice, by them granting you permission to sue them, they are still in charge, because they can take that permission away. So it's a privilege they've given you. It's not that somebody has authority over them, trying to do something to them. They are allowing you to do something. So, while as a practical matter we oftentimes can sue the government, this principle of sovereign immunity still exists, which means if the government has not given permission for people to sue them in a certain situation, there is a presumption that they cannot be sued. Okay, let's review what we learned in this lesson. What does it mean for a case to be justiciable? Is it just a small claim? Is it an old controversy? Has justice been done in the case? Or is it a case that can be decided in a court? If a case is justiciable, then that means a court can actually decide it. What is not allowed by the need for an actual controversy? Does that mean that there can't be clear and obvious guilt? Does that mean that the lawsuit can't be about an old injury? Does that mean you can't have repeated lawsuits? Or does that mean you can't have a hypothetical case? It means that you can't bring a hypothetical case to court. There has to be some real injury that happened. What does it mean that a party to a case must have standing? Does it mean that the party is the main defendant? That the party was harmed by the controversy in the case? That the party didn't file the case in time? Or that the party lost the case? To have standing, you have to be the party that was actually harmed by whatever the controversy was in the case. What is sovereign immunity? Is it that the nation always beats states when they go to court against each other? Is that you can't sue the government? Is it that the government wins every case? Is it that the president can't commit crimes? Sovereign immunity means that you can't sue the government. That completes this lesson. The next lesson from Unit 7 will be Lesson 6 about jurisdiction.